got there, it was like a crime scene. There were thousands of people, police cars. I couldn't get to her. They wouldn't let me get to her. And I never felt anger because I know you wouldn't want that. I know you want me to show forgiveness and love so that my son grows up only knowing what love is.
This is Touched by Heaven, everyday encounters with God, those moments when heaven and earth collide. And we see God, we see His hand reaching out to us, attempting to get our attention, inviting us into a closer relationship. Here we share stories of encounters with angels, divine intervention, prophetic dreams, visions, near-death experiences. I'm your host, Trapper Jack, and this is one of those, well, you've heard the story, how your life can change, how the world can change in the blink of an eye.
And, my daughter was 11 when she was, taken to heaven with her cousins, and that was 3.5 years ago.
This was a major news story in Australia a few years ago. And what Bridget has done with the tragedy, the death of her daughter, is just remarkable. There's touched by heaven, moments in this of going to the light, if you will. I'm looking at today's readings, and they correlate. That thief that comes in the night, you don't see him coming, everything looks fine, it's quiet, it's peaceful, and then the thief comes and there's tragedy. That's in today's readings today as I post this on Sunday, November 19th of 2023.
Hi, Trapper. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
I hear fantastic stuff about you.
It's all lies.
The people that tell me, they're very honest people.
It was just a little over a year ago now. We were in Medjugorje, and I remember one night, Angie and David, they were saying they were going out to dinner to get together with you, and they told me a little bit about your story.
Yeah.
You were a rather large Australian story, sadly to say.
Yes. Really worked hard to do the best I can as a single mother to raise the kids, and then to think that they could be walking on a footpath, getting an ice cream, to be, run over and killed. There were 7 kids.
7 kids, all of them hit by a drunk driver. 4 of them died, including Veronique.
She used to say to me, Mum, why is my name Veronique? It's so long.
Veronique, interesting name. Bridget came across somebody who had that name and always thought that'd be a great name for her daughter.
I used to call her Nikki, actually, N-I-K-K-I, but other people would call her Vero and V.
Okay.
Because she was such a old soul and very mature. Even though she was 11, she loved cooking and feeding people. And if she got a birthday present, she wouldn't even open it. She wasn't material in that way. She just loved hanging out with people, and she loved animals. She loved dogs. And
Bridget and her husband, Craig, she just married last year after her first marriage ended in divorce and annulment.
Because I got married last year in January to this lovely, beautiful man, and has been, I believe that God always brings someone in to someone's life to carry them and help them and support them, and he's been my rock.
They were going to go to a party that night. Her son, Michael, then 13, was going to stay home. Daughter Veronique was going to go over to her cousin's for a sleepover.
And she said, Mum, come help me pack my bag. And I thought, oh, that's strange. She normally packs her own stuff. She said to her brother, bye, Michael. You come and go all the time. I've never noticed them say goodbye to each other that way. And I said to her on the way there, I love you, Mum. And we had this, beautiful conversation. Got out of the car and I said, Veronique, put your sneakers on. And because she had we call them thongs, like slip-ons. And I knocked on the door and Danny said, has she eaten? I said, look, my daughter can always eat.
As Bridget and Craig are arriving at the party, her cell phone rings and it's her cousin.
My cousin Danny rang and I said, is everything okay, Danny? Because I thought I just dropped her off. And he said, no. He said, I've lost my 3 kids. And I went, oh. And I thought, did they run around in the streets or? And then he said, no, they're dead. And I said, what? I don't know. All I remember was, well, how do I ask about my daughter Veronique? How can I be so selfish? And because he's just told me his kids have died, and then I sort of said, well, what about Veronique? And he said, look, please come to Oatlands Golf Club. I got in. I don't know how I got to the car. I don't know how I made my way down the stairs with my husband. And I just got in the car and I prayed the Hail Mary and the Our Father and the Hail Mary. And I felt like it was like agony in the garden, that please God, take this cup away from me, I hope. I didn't want to go to the worst place. I just didn't want to accept anything happen to her. When we got there, it was like a crime scene. There were thousands of people, police cars. I couldn't get to her. They wouldn't let me get to her. I don't even know when and how they told me that Veronique was one of the 4 children that were killed. And they're walking on the footpath, and a drunk drug driver driving on 130 kilometres an hour, hit all 7 of them, and 4 of them were killed. And, I can't even explain, the excruciating pain or the heaviness that you feel, and the heaviness never goes away. The first thing I asked was for God's mercy. I said, God, have mercy on me and have mercy on this driver. I had no room for judgment, but I just asked for his mercy. I just began to realise and somehow know that, the realisation that God permits certain things to allow certain things to take place for the greater good. And, that greater good is the fact that we decided that we would have forgiveness in our hearts. Having that forgiveness where, you really start to think about Jesus who was on the cross, and he forgave those soldiers that were piercing him and feeding him with, vinegar and torturing him. And he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they're doing. And, the justice and forgiveness are 2 different things. There needs to be justice, and there are consequences to your actions. But I start to think, God, I need to have forgiveness in my heart. I need to let go of any anger and I never felt anger, but any feeling that would make me pass judgment or be angry, because I know you wouldn't want that. I know you want me to show forgiveness and love, so that my son grows up only knowing what love is. And when people would come to us saying, how could you do this? How could you forgive? And through forgiveness, you're able to do amazing things. You're able to actually see what the resurrection of Christ was all about. But suffering, there is suffering. He reminds us that, I suffered. God allowed his only son to suffer, and it's a reminder that suffering is part of life. We're all going to suffer, and we're all going to grieve if we love.
You have a choice in this. You can turn to bitterness, you can turn to anger, you can turn to vengeance, you can turn to a lot of things, and you haven't. So I want to touch on that. But going back, because everything that happened at that crime scene, and when you say footpath, is that like a sidewalk here?
Yeah, sidewalk, yeah.
Okay, so they're going to get ice cream. They've already got their ice cream. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it was 10 to 8 in the evening, so it was summer, it was daylight. And they were walking, as you would call it, on the sidewalk to grab an ice cream in a suburban street, not on the main highway, just in a suburban street. And they never made it. In a blink of an eye, this vehicle kept going for another, I don't know, quite a bit. It didn't stop at just the crash. It kept going.
So you get a sense that he's saying, do I stop? Do I stop? Do I keep going? He knows he just did something.
Yeah. I think it was he because he was so intoxicated, he could see them, absolutely could see the kids, and he had a passenger with him. He was driving dangerously, and they were, sticking their fingers up at people driving down the road. He was 29. He wasn't young, but he was 29-year-old to drive a truck. So the first judge really went through the judgment line by line, and we sat there listening and, listening to how our kids were, how they landed, where they landed, right to the depths of how they were found. And my son was there, and I said, Michael, if you want to leave and not listen to this, and he said, Mum, I need to listen to this, because if something happened to you, and Dad, who would tell me what's really happened, what happened to my sister? It was horrific. But you're right, there are choices you can make in life. You could sit in anger and be a victim and blame, But it wasn't God who told him to drive like that. We all have free will. We all make choices. He chose to take drugs that day, all day. He chose to drink. He chose to get behind a vehicle. He chose to drive recklessly. It wasn't God. And I do believe that if it wasn't for God, and the knowing that my daughter is with him, that hope, that resurrection, that hope, that the cross. And there's one person that I really, my heart was really joined to her heart, and that's Our Lady. She watched her son. She watched him being tortured. As painful as that moment was, how excruciating that moment was, there was an honour in all that, where, she got to see and to know that her son rose from the dead and ascended to heaven. And I have had that experience of being a mother, obviously, knowing my child was killed, but then I have that honour of knowing that my daughter is with Jesus. I don't feel like I have to worry about her soul. I think if she was a bit older and, started to explore life, you start to worry about, the soul of your child. But I don't have that. The true belief that I have, that there is life after death, and I will see her again.
Have you had any reason to cross paths with the driver, Samuel, or family, or anything like that?
I've had the opportunity to meet the driver's parents and to listen to them and to hear the story of the driver and how he grew up and he lost his sister. And though it doesn't excuse his behaviour, and I really believe sin leads to sin, drugs and alcohol, getting behind a vehicle, there's no excuses for that. But he's in a cell where there are a lot of Catholic Maronites around him, and he's learning about our faith, and starting to pray the rosary.
How do you know all of that?
I found that out through a priest that had gone to see him, and he was a priest that had, is in our community and has a lot of contact with Danny and Layla. And he rang me to say, this is what's happening. I think the parents would like to meet, and would you like to meet with them? So Danny, myself, and Layla and my husband Craig met with the parents. And I've stayed in touch with his mum. She's a mother, and I think to myself, she's in pain as well. She lost her daughter with cancer. But I kind of, I bought a couple of books for her to give to Samuel. I don't even remember who the authors were, but one was about, some questions if you want to become a Catholic, some of the questions to think about, and the other one was a 33-day consecration
To Mary.
to Mary. Yeah.
In these kinds of court cases, you may have seen where family members are allowed to speak directly to the person convicted, the defendant. This is what Bridget did with that moment.
And I asked for him to really get to know God, to meet God, and to really be sorry, because we can forgive, but and the repentance is between him and God. But without that, I don't think he's really ever going to know God's mercy. But I read to him, that I'll extend my forgiveness. I really want you to meet God, and to really one day maybe come on my heartfelt platform.
The heartfelt platform, more on that in a second, but it's where people can come together as a community and share their own stories.
I really want you one day to come on to heartfelt, and I really believe he one day will share the story. He will share his conversion. And I do believe it's the children's intercession that has really touched him. And I really believe our children from above, and I feel like the children were just so young and innocent, that they're with the Lord and with our Mother Mary, and they are praying for us. They're praying for him.
What is your sense from talking to his mom about where?
I get the sense he's praying the rosary, loves the rosary. Okay. He's even apparently he's read the books I gave him. And I said to her, look, I've got a couple more books that I've picked up for him. I sense that he's yearning for God. And I think by God's grace, he apparently prays the rosary 3 times a day.
Wow. What kind of jail sentence did he get? How long did he get?
Look, he first got 28 years with 21 years non-parole. And then he appealed and it went down to 20 years with 15 years non-parole. Because in Australia, a lot of people only get 1 or 2 years, and they're really trying to work with the government to get those laws reviewed. So
Have you looked at, I assume you've looked at laws all around the world, including the U.S., in terms of drunk driving and manslaughter charges and all of that, how it's viewed here. Did that help at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I know they looked at my husband's, they did quite a bit of research, and the US was very much looked at in terms of how they treat offenders who kill using their vehicle. In Australia, it's very weak, very, very weak. Some people get 2 years, 3 years. Some people get community service. And it was deemed that his sentence was harsh, but when you killed 4 children and hit 3, and one of them was in a coma for 2 months. How is it possible that there is no penalties? Because if there are no consequences, then how do you signal to the Australian community that this stuff cannot happen? You can't drive under the influence and get away with it.
Yeah, in this country, when a woman with, and I don't remember the exact story, but Mothers Against Drunk Driving, when that began here, it changed drinking. There was humor in drinking until that force started happening in this country. All of a sudden, there used to be a comedian named Foster Brooks, and his whole thing was just always looking drunk and sounding drunk. And then suddenly it wasn't funny anymore. And so Mothers Against Drunk Driving took a lot of the humor out of it. And when people get behind the wheel of a car, and how many drivers haven't in some way, shape, or form been at least slightly inebriated, and it just brought all of that forefront, and it had an impact. It still has a huge impact.
Yes, I do. I do remember do remember that. I do remember hearing about that. I do remember reading about that impact. But there's a long way to go here in Australia. It's on the rise. It hasn't died down. And before there was a lot of sort of road breath testing by the police force, but that's kind of because of limited resources. So road tolls are up 30%.
That's horrible. It's going the wrong way. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm looking at today's readings. Another one of the readings today has to do with talents. Jesus telling the parable about, you have the talents, the one who's given 5, the one given 2, the one given 1. One buries his talents, and the other ones who do something with their talents. Certainly true with Bridget.
I feel like God asked me, he said, Bridget, you've got amazing skills and talents that I've gifted you with, and you've used that in your corporate life. Now I want you to use that in your life today, healing the broken hearts of others who've lost someone so dear to them. And I feel that that's my calling, to be like a wounded healer. I try and use all the skills that God's given me. I do a lot of presentations out there, share my story, share my testimony. I get up every day, and I chose to take a pathway of creating a platform to help people that are wounded because they've lost someone in their life.
Is this video? Is this audio? Is this chat? How do you do it?
Yeah, it's on Zoom. It's on Zoom. Or we have about 20 people come every Monday night. There's 150 people now in the community. And that's called heartfelt. The felt is family is experiencing loss and trauma. And also we've opened up a cafe.
Yes, they have purchased a cafe. The idea being that the proceeds will fund scholarships, educational scholarships.
The cafe is called Quatre, which is 4 in French, after the 4 children, and because my daughter loved cooking and feeding people. And the proceeds of the cafe are going towards a scholarship for a girl who ordinarily wouldn't be able to afford to go to the school my daughter used to go to. and they've found a beautiful, beautiful young girl from a single family, and she'll really carry the flag for Veronique, and the cafe will pay for her school tuition, and but none of this could be possible without God's blessing and the forgiveness that I have in my heart. And my husband's working very hard with a group they've set up it's called the Road Trauma Support Group, and they're working on trying to change laws on the road. My son, he's now an only child on earth, and I think he wasn't born an only child, and then he lost his father 3 months ago with pancreatic cancer. To see somebody have so much trauma in his life, through his parents breaking up, his sister dying traumatically, his grandfather dying a year later, his father dying a year after that, and he's only just turned 17, so it's a lot.
There's your son. I just heard a mom.
Oh no! I'm going. Oh my God, he's calling out for me, but he doesn't know I'm on the phone in the room. Anyway,
Could I ask you this? This may be inappropriate. Can I ask if I could talk to him?
Yeah. Have a chat. Hang on, let me see if I can.
Yeah, Michael.
Hang on. Yeah, Michael. Michael, is this Pepper?
Hello, Chopper.
Hey, come on over to the phone, Michael. I appreciate just kind of a moment with you. Did she tell you what I am, who I am, what we do around here?
No.
You tell him.
Okay.
Go first.
I do a podcast. It's called Touched by Heaven: Everyday Encounters with God. I thought, well, here you are, and you've gone through a lot of loss in the last few years that she was telling me about.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, if I could go back a little bit to when all of this happened, your mom, and I'm going to get back to mom a little bit to see if it was as clear cut as this, but she stayed amazingly away from anger. She just kind of wrapped herself as much in her faith as possible. What about you? Anger, vengeance, did you have to go through a phase of that?
I think because I was 13, but because I was surrounded with people like mum and my family, we sort of all lent on each other and used each other for support and support each other. So I think because of that, no one really had the opportunity to withhold anger. So, and then obviously, we're all very tight and close with our faith. So, yeah, no, definitely no anger from our as a whole family, let alone just mum. So,
How did you hear the news?
I wasn't told till I got there. It was very late. Dad told me, and you sort of had to connect the dots because no one had answers. Yeah.
Have you had dreams of her?
A little bit, not too many.
What happens?
Sometimes just in them laughing or just a small appearance, but nothing too major, unfortunately.
But she has joy when you do. It's just like she's laughing.
Yeah, of course.
Does all of this change any view you might have had on alcohol or drugs or any of that?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's not the view. Like I'm not against it in any way. It's not alcohol, but drugs. Yeah, like I think no one should fall down that path. It's an addiction that just digs a deeper hole for someone. But I think he's a great example of what not to do.
Have you found yourself praying for the driver, Samuel?
Yeah, I do. Just I think more importantly, just praying for people to make the right decisions and understand their decisions in the moment. Because obviously he wasn't aware of what he was doing and not just impacted the four kids, but people around the world.
Yeah, this has had an impact on a lot, and I assume. I mean, this was a major story in Australia when all of this happened. Did you watch it or stay away from it?
The media?
Yeah.
He lived it.
Yeah, I tried to escape it, but I couldn't. It was just everywhere, and not just on the media itself, but around everyone hearing it, they're coming up to you, messages from people you don't even know. So it was definitely hard to escape from. I'm one. I don't like the media. I don't like being in the limelight because sort of makes it harder to live like the normal kid.
Well, God bless your faith, Michael. And by the way, congratulations, Captain.
Oh,
Is that a sport title, or is that some other kind of captain?
No, it's a school. That's the
yeah,
whole school
college,
captain,
yeah, the
college captain.
Oh, okay. How old are you now?
17.
Yeah. Well, God bless you, Michael. You're you're a role model to us all. You really are. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Papa. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you.
Well, there you go. See,
Wow.
by calling mum, you got a snippet of my son.
Meant to be. Meant to be.
Yeah. I feel his words to you that he didn't have the chance to have anger. You know, it's the space, it's the environment he's around, and I really believe your environment has a lot to do with who you are and how you grow. And to know that my son never saw hatred or anger in the most harrowing time that could have been, then he's going to be that person with his children.
What about you? Have you dreams of Nikki?
Yeah, I've had a few dreams of her. She's probably always around that 9-year age, not necessarily right at the end. She's always smiling. She hasn't spoken to me. Like, I haven't had the comment. Like, she doesn't talk, but she comes and she smiles, and sometimes I go, Nikki or Veronique, come, where have you been? And I grab her and I hug her, and so I probably dreamt of her about maybe 6 or 7 times, maybe 8 times. It's hard. You wake up and you go, oh my God, I saw Veronique. It's interesting, like if I say one signal that I could say, I mean, the girl that the school found to take the scholarship, I didn't know this girl, and, this girl had come into our cafe a few times, but she was always praying to Veronique, like. And if you see the faith of this girl, the fact that she came from my old school and wants to be a lawyer, like Veronique wanted to be a lawyer, I just think Veronique picked her. Like, she just picked this girl. I don't know how to explain that, but the grace you see from, this young girl who, comes from a single family and this opportunity, but just the way it all worked. Just moments in life where people come into your life, or people have told me that they've dreamt of Veronique, and one particular person told me that she'd gone to the hairdresser, and the hairdresser, one of the clients, fell pregnant because Veronique came to her in a dream and told her what to do. And there's a couple of stories where I can share where I've gone and prayed with someone who's really sick, and they were very sick, and then through Veronique's intercession they've been healed. So there's all these different moments where you're just reassured, and the signs that you're given, the touched by heaven signs, that you know that heaven is on earth. I'm still very connected to her school friends' mothers and the kids, the daughters, because I like to see. I want to see them grow up. I want to see them develop, and how they, what they do during school and after school, what they become. And I could distance myself and cut myself off from that, or I could choose to be a part of that, as painful as it is. But I think I prefer the pain and being in it than the avoidance. And I think that's what heartfelt is about as well, where in Australia, and I don't know in America, but we live in a countercultural society where we put grief under the carpet. We just don't talk about it. We move on. But really, you don't move on from grief. You learn to grow around it. It's like if you learn to grow around that suffering. And the more we're able to talk about something, I think it just takes that edge off that constant heaviness. Just because they're not with us physically, they're still with us. Yeah.
Eternal beings. God bless you for this. What hasn't been said that needs to be said?
I'm from a finance and insurance background, and I always say the bank of faith paid its dividends. Yeah. And I really feel, without my faith and without God's mercy, there is no way that I would be able to, get up every day and carry my cross and ask God to guide me and give me the strength and to glorify Him and honour my daughter in all that.
Normally, I would ask, what's our takeaway? I think you just gave it.
There you go. So that's kind of, that's my story.
It's a beautiful story. What you've done with tragedy is just remarkable. And,
Thank you very much.
God selected you, and it's a painful selection, but He selected you to do something great.
And that's why I say, God, I've never said why me, God, but I say how, God, how do you want me to deal with this? What am I supposed to do? Like, what would you like me to do with all this? And what can I do to serve others in this space? Because I know the feeling.
Amen. Amen. Thank you for spending a big chunk of your evening with us there in
Oh my
Australia.
God.
As I spend early morning hours in my world, I really appreciate the connection here.
Thank you. Lovely chatting to you, Trapper. Thank you very much.
God bless you.
God bless you.
Thanks, Bridget and Michael, for popping in there. What timing, right? We have a link in the show notes to Heartfelt if you want to check that out. Otherwise, a quick Patreon shout out also to Aaron Copeland. Thank you so much for keeping the show going week to week. You can come here to click your way through to Patreon or go to patreon.com and search for Trapper Jack. How about we just close it out with see you next week at Touched by Heaven, Everyday Encounters with God. I'm Trapper Jack. And the big takeaway is?
The justice and forgiveness are two different things. There needs to be justice and there are consequences to your actions. But I start to think, God, I need to have forgiveness in my heart. I know you want me to show forgiveness and love.